Welcome, Chosen X. You step into a place where the ordinary arrangement of sound and light stumbles as if someone quietly rearranged the notes of a familiar song. People continue their small conversations, but their cadence falters when you arrive. A stillness, dense, settles like old paper folded until it remembers a different crease. Your presence is not a heralded entrance. It is a slow correction in the angle of attention that registers inside others as ease or unease. You do not seek spectatorship. The world adjusts to a frequency you carry because you have learned to live in a narrow bandwidth of intention. That constraint is not deprivation. It is focus, and focus has the curious effect of making less loud things suddenly intelligible. In rooms where people once competed for voice, you watch silence rearrange itself into a respectful pause. The air holds a soft pressure that lets small truths surface. When strangers glance at you, they do not simply notice the form. They recognize an invitation that looks like a memory, as if some private knowledge has found a way to manifest in skin and posture. This recognition troubles them. It chases questions they would rather not confront because questions often demand action. Many will name their response as admiration or suspicion. Few will name the deeper ache that stirs when they witness steadiness. The energy you emit is not manufactured. It is the consequence of choosing attention over distraction enough for the body to learn the architecture of that choice. You have practiced returning. In tiny rituals, in mornings of deliberate breathing and afternoons where you refuse to amplify noise, you train a tendency toward clarity. The result is not invulnerability. You still carry doubt, fatigue, and grief. What changes is how these contents move through you. There will be moments when that clarity is tested. Someone will push a question that wears the mask of curiosity but hides a knife. A crowd will press for spectacle. Old colleagues will attempt to translate your way into a replicable method because they crave predictability. These confrontations are not accidents. They are the field revealing itself. Resistance often looks like demand. When you maintain composure under that pressure, you reshape the dynamics of the room without adding force. You learn to accept the loneliness that accompanies differentiation. It is not isolation but an expanded perimeter. Some relationships narrow because they cannot contain your steadiness. Others widen because their scales finally align. The important practice is not to remove yourself from the community but to allow the community to soften and harden in response to the influence you practice. You do this not by performance but by fidelity to the small actions that organize your days. A life calibrated in this way will be filled with ordinary responsibilities that demand extraordinary patience. Grocery lines, apartment repairs, late-night conversations with friends who have not yet remembered how to steady themselves. These are the sites where your practice matters most. The work of quiet attention is not glamorous. It is faithful, repetitive, and, over years, quietly transformative. People begin to learn that what you offer is not a clean solution but a companionable method for living. Symbols will gather around your routines. A particular walk through the neighborhood might acquire a meaning that has nothing to do with place and everything to do with the rhythm of your arrival. Objects that once felt ordinary will become anchors for others who want to practice. They will stand in the doorway and watch you perform the unartful acts that maintain inner alignment. Your role will not be to command but to reflect. You will offer situations where others can test a different mode of being. Sometimes your quiet will be a mirror and sometimes a threshold. People will approach seeking to borrow steadiness as if it were a garment. You will gently refuse performance and instead invite them into short experiments that they can carry home. Freedom is not transmitted by spectacle. It is learned in rehearsal. In this season you will also confront misinterpretation. False theories will circulate. Some will write flattering stories about miraculous gifts. Others will create elaborate explanations to domesticate what they cannot understand. You will neither confirm fantasies nor encourage illusions. Your practice will be proof and pedagogy simultaneously. You will teach how to return to breath, how to name interior sensation without blame, how to notice the temptation to perform and to bow instead to honesty. By the end of the chapter, a quiet covenant will form, not with signatures or promises but with repeated small interactions that build trust. Those who remain will be practitioners who arrive with undone history and willingness to try again. The real work begins in intervals where you stay present and tend ordinary life with steady care. Again, you enter the second phase with a steadying heart and a readiness to translate stillness into practice. Crowds that once orbited you will learn to test the space you hold. Some visitors will arrive with polite skepticism and a readiness to decode technique. Others will come with private tremors they do not yet have language for. Your work becomes linguistic and somatic at once, pairing inquiry with embodied ritual so that people can access simple habits that alter felt experience. An early confrontation will force you to clarify what you will and will not translate. A friend who admires your poise will ask for a manual. They will want instructions they can copy and distribute. You will explain that fidelity is shaped by repetition and context rather than by an exact script. Offer instead a brief practice in situ. Breathe 3 measured cycles, lower your gaze for a counted beat, then let attention return to the room. When the friend repeats this daily, they will notice small shifts in how pressure lands inside them and how speech emerges in steadier tone. Clusters of ordinary practice will form organically. People gather at benches, laundromats, and shared kitchens. They show up and attempt short experiments, a minute of unhurried listening, a deliberate pause before answering, a ritual of closing a day with an honest inventory. These habits will not promise overnight transformation. They promise repeated structure where noticing becomes easier and reactivity softens. The work is stubbornly unglamorous and therefore durable. You will encounter institutional interest that seeks to distill these habits into measurable units. Administrators will propose curricula, consultants will design metrics, and entrepreneurs will imagine scalable templates. Resist the temptation to convert presence into procedure. Protect space for improvisation and situational judgment. Encourage practices that scale in spirit rather than in replication. Insist that context matters and that nuance resists flattening. Skeptics will persist. Some critics will view your work as a luxury available only to those with spare bandwidth. Others will mimic parts of your approach without embracing depth. When critics demand evidence, point to consistent returns, fewer escalations at community tables, calmer exchanges at civic meetings, an increase in neighborly assistance during ordinary crises. Use these as indicators of relational change, not as proof that replaces practice. A pivotal test will arrive when an ally attempts to claim ownership over a sequence you demonstrated. They will propose intellectual property that would restrict access. You will have to decide whether to litigate, to negotiate, or to publicly renounce ownership for the sake of communal flourishing. Choosing to renounce will reduce short-term influence but strengthen the integrity of the work and invite broader stewardship. Intimacy will surface in unexpected ways. A former critic may return with a humbled stance and a request to learn. A neighbor will quietly leave food at your door as an offering of care. These small gestures will demonstrate how attention rewires reciprocity. Log each moment not as proof of success but as reminders that ordinary acts sustain repair and trust. Translation work will push you to simplify language while preserving nuance. Create micro-practices that require little time and even less equipment, a 2-minute pause, a vocalization that resets the chest, a brief communal silence before meals. Make these practices public and free, distributed through flyers, neighborhood boards, and brief local meetings. The goal is accessibility, not brand proliferation. A public media request will test your resolve. Producers will want sound bites and spectacle. Offer instead a format that models practice live, with pauses and unedited moments. If the platform will not agree, decline. That refusal will be a boundary that clarifies values and protects against dilution. It will also signal to sincere seekers that depth matters more than exposure. Over seasons you will witness cultural shifts. Morning rhythms change, shops adopt quiet hours, and conversations adopt a slower cadence. People will begin debating when measurement helps and when craft must be trusted. Your commitment to practice over promotion will set a tone that resists quick fixes and values embodied learning. Remember that your responsibility is not to perfect others but to keep returning to practice yourself. Your presence works as a steadying field because it is maintained through daily attention. Invite others into rehearsal, hold simplicity as an ethic, and insist that repair is small and cumulative. A season of tests will follow that reveals whether the practice can survive novelty. Unexpected crises will arrive: supply shortages, neighborhood tensions, sudden losses that demand presence without performance. In those hours, the practice will be judged by its capacity to hold grief and to mobilize care. You will not be asked to fix everything, only to sustain a field where aid can be coordinated with dignity. Those small acts will become lasting structures of mutual dependence built from steady attention and humane labor. In years to come, these local habits will outlast fads and steady civic care. You awaken in a season where inner work begins to show its architecture in quieter details. The public field around your steady practice now asks for more than demonstration. People who once watched from doorways seek methods that change felt experience and habitual reactivity. Your work becomes both cultivation and instruction. You refine habits while keeping them possible for ordinary lives. Begin with gestures that require little time. Invite a short settling before meals. Teach a breath pattern that restores clarity when emotions flare. Offer a listening protocol that lets two people practice presence without advice. Keep instructions concise and repeatable. Potency lies in repetition, not novelty. Memory is a resource. Lead people to recall moments of unburdened calm. Ask them to map where that state lives in the body and how it smells or sounds. Use these recollections as anchors. When learners can summon a prior felt sense, they are less likely to be hijacked by panic. As the field deepens, old pains surface. Grief, regret, and shame will appear. This is evidence of progress. Provide templates for bearing difficult feeling without collapse. Teach grounding, boundary setting, and returning to breath. Encourage small acts of repair, brief apologies, offers of help, or simple gestures of care. Create small gatherings that balance speaking and listening. Start with a measured silence and close with a practical experiment for the week. Keep formats modest so people juggling work and family can attend. Ritual must be accessible. Train the skill of inquiry. Model questions that open instead of close. Ask partners to speak for a fixed interval while listeners reflect back without judgment. This disciplined attention teaches steadiness and reduces reactive reply. Calibrate language. Use concrete verbs that point to action. Prefer observe to mystify, notice to yield, and steady to idealize. Clear labels make habits easier. Resist pressure to scale quickly. Offers of wide distribution will appear attractive. Protect nuance by building local nodes where practice is embedded in daily routines and supported by relational accountability. Address access ethically. Design micro-interventions that fold into existing rhythms. Teach a 1-minute reset for breaks and a 30-second centering for thresholds. Provide materials free and encourage peer support. Mistakes will be instructive. Some experiments will fail because timing or context was wrong. Study failures with humility and adjust. Value iteration over doctrine. Use art to sustain attention. Musicians can craft brief pieces that scaffold breath. Visual markers can cue practice. Aesthetic forms make repetition pleasurable and help habits stick. Leadership will decentralize. New facilitators will adapt practices for local life. Mentor them through apprenticeship that emphasizes care and context rather than certification. Prepare communities for collective grief. As attention deepens, old wounds will surface publicly. Teach methods for containing shared sorrow and for organizing mutual aid without burning out volunteers. Use rotating responsibilities to distribute care. The work should become a distributed network of small steady acts that form a reliable field. Your role is to return to practice, model humility in error, and mentor with service. Strength grows when practices are woven into daily life and when repair, learning, and shared labor are prioritized over charisma. Invite regular check-ins where small groups report on experiments. Encourage culturally appropriate adaptations and share simple guides employers can use to add brief pauses before meetings to lower reactivity and improve focus. Work with existing networks like tenant groups and shift supervisors so resets fit daily life. Design feedback systems that prioritize care. Provide private channels for suggestions and keep shared notes as living documents that record what was tried and what changed. Guard confidentiality. When disputes arise, teach mediation circles with listening rituals. Offer step-by-step de-escalation tools that center breath, paraphrase, and time-bounded speaking turns. These interventions let people face conflict while protecting relationships. Run short seasonal gatherings that refresh practice, mentor new facilitators, and test micro-interventions. Keep these events affordable and grounded with meals and movement so they model practice. Hold curiosity as an ethic. Treat skepticism as data. Respond with small experiments rather than defenses. Allow failure to inform adjustments. The approach lasts when it is humble, flexible, and embedded in everyday life. You will be tested by intimacy in unexpected forms. A close friend will bring you their worst fear disguised as humor. A lover might request change as an ultimatum. Family history will surface with old accusations that read like petitions for your compliance. In these private theaters, your steadiness will be challenged in ways that public moments never could. The practice of holding will require you to act with softness and with firmness simultaneously. You will learn new vocabulary for refusal that is not rejection. The language will be precise and quiet. You will refuse without aggression by naming the limits of your availability and by offering alternatives that respect both your care and your boundaries. People will object. They are processing the loss of entitlement. Your refusal will be interpreted as abandonment at first, for old patterns fear being unexamined. In the small battles, the differences between compassion and compulsion will be revealed. You will act as a translator between wanting and capacity. Some will ask for miracles. You will instead invite experiments. Try this practice for a week. Hold your breath for quality, not for length. Return to wonder as you would to a childhood landscape. These proposals will be humble but potent. There will be a night when you are tempted to perform kindness for applause. You will notice the impulse like a fly at the edge of your vision, and you will name it. Naming will diffuse the compulsion. You will step away from theater and toward craft. A crafted life does not mean contrived gestures. It means attention honed and invested where it matters. The world around you will also present trials of belief. Some will demand evidence of your claims about inner clarity. They will require metrics and measurable outcomes, and they will offer consultants who claim to quantify transformation. You will listen politely and decline the reduction because what you do resists simple metrics. This resistance will anger those who rely on numbers to distribute trust. Accessibility will arise as an ethical question. How can those with less leisure practice these ways when survival removes the bandwidth to attend? You will invest effort in designing gestures that are inexpensive, practical, and repeatable. You will teach habits that fold into daily work so poor conditions do not exclude people from the practice. Justice will matter because the work is only meaningful when it touches all classes of people. In one winter you will travel to a neighborhood where cold is not only weather but a permanent condition. There you will learn that presence without material aid is still insufficient. You will organize others to respond with tangible support. This will humble you and teach you that the movement must include service that meets material need as readily as it teaches inner steadiness. As leaders emerge in that place, they will carry diverse interpretations. Some will insist on austerity as a virtue, while others will celebrate abundance as an expression of care. You will mediate, not by decree but by setting examples that integrate generosity with restraint. The rightness of an approach will be tested in practice by whether it sustains joy alongside discipline. Struggles will arise around recognition. Some will expect titles and say you must approve them. You will refuse hierarchical rituals that mimic power structures you oppose. Instead, you will help to form rotational responsibilities rooted in service and accountability. Authority in this place will be earned through labor and tenderness rather than conferred by image or speech. A storm of criticism will come from public quarters who misunderstand the refusal to monetize as cowardice. They will call your restraint naive. You will endure accusations that you are gatekeeping or antiquated. In those moments, keep returning to small practices. Let daily fidelity answer public doubt with steady work. Over time, the skeptics will either adapt or move on. At the close of this chapter, you will sit by a window and watch rain map the city. Someone you did not expect will come to hold your hand without ceremony. In that touch, you will feel the geometry of the work rearrange. The intimacy will not undo the practice. Instead, it will reveal new ways to extend it. You will rise from that chair with the sense that tenderness and truth can be braided together into action that endures. You will notice the pattern of transmission changing shape. Rituals will appear. You enter a season where small acts reshape ordinary days into quieter economies of care. Neighbors fold brief pauses into morning routines. Shift crews begin with 2 measured breaths so labor starts with less friction. Cafes hold a silent moment before the first order. Parents breathe with children at thresholds. These small shifts form scaffolding that supports steadiness when life becomes urgent. You are no longer merely an exemplar. You cultivate practices that travel through ordinary channels. New leaders arise who learn at your table and then adapt rituals to local tempo and constraint. A transit attendant shortens a checklist to include a mindful pause. A laundromat patron offers a minute of listening. These adaptations preserve the ethic and honor context so no single style dominates. A spare filmed sequence appears on screens people pass. It is quiet and generous. Frames linger on hands and the way light crosses a counter. The clip offers micro-practices from 30 seconds to 5 minutes so people with tight schedules can enter. The voice invites a single experiment. Try this now. Inhale 4 counts, pause, exhale 4 counts, return to a task with renewed attention. The piece models practice, not spectacle. Editing avoids quick cuts. The camera respects ordinary movements so viewers see themselves rather than an unreachable teacher. Options appear for bodies that cannot sit and for environments that are noisy. Inclusion is practical rather than performative. The reception is humble. People try the prompt at stoops, on lunch breaks and while waiting for transit. They leave quick notes about small changes. Local coordinators collect these and refine prompts for future segments. The recording catalyzes practice and practice informs the recordings. Media acts as conduit, not center. At the close, the presenter looks into the lens with steady candor. The invitation is practical. Receive brief prompts that arrive at ordinary thresholds in your day and enable reminders timed to moments you choose. The language frames this as a disciplined commitment rather than consumer behavior. Turning on reminders is a modest vow to rehearse again. Accepting the invitation is not endorsing a personality. It is joining a distributed apprenticeship. Reminders are rhythmic nudges that help keep practice alive amid distraction. Clips offer micro-experiments and local groups treat them as seeds for neighborly gatherings and mutual aid. The network stays polycentric because organizers adapt prompts instead of imposing templates. You continue tending your immediate circle while supporting the wider constellation. Your primary task remains personal integrity and tender mentorship. The screen supports reach without replacing relational labor. You move into the widening field with steadiness, clarity, and a quiet sense of duty to the practice. Over months, you notice subtle changes. Meetings start with short pauses. People answer with more care. Lines move with less impatience. Volunteers coordinate aid with fewer conflicts. Small cumulative acts become durable patterns. You design rotating responsibilities to prevent burnout and distribute care. Circles share meal runs, childcare swaps, and ride coordination with a rhythm that pairs service with attention. Rituals are modest and reciprocal so no single person carries the burden. Criticism emerges. Some call reminders intrusive and claim practice is a soft substitute for structural reform. You pair attention with service. Practice without meeting material need is insufficient. Where poverty is structural, you coordinate tangible aid alongside micro-rituals so dignity and sustenance travel together. Apprentices archive experiments and record failures. These living notes guide future practice and prevent dogma. Practice remains adaptive, humble, and context-aware. You recognize the screen as a means of invitation and not origin. The primary field stays embodied gatherings, kitchens, and workrooms. The media amplifies practices so more hands can find a way into steadiness. You choose continuity over spectacle. You press a modest button to receive reminders and treat that act as a promise. When a prompt arrives, you stop for a breath and try a small experiment. You return to ordinary life carrying a quieter economy of care. The movement spreads through everyday fidelity. The flame that began in private rooms moves through common hands and ordinary rituals, and in that slow transmission steadiness becomes ordinary. In time, this way of living alters expectations. People expect presence at meetings, kindness in service exchanges, and patience in emergencies. The work endures because it is mundane and repeatable. You remain patient with the slow arc. You tend to practice rather than image. You accept that influence is measured in small returns. You keep walking forward, committed to steady care in ordinary moments. Each repetition secures a future less hurried. Stay steady.